Have you ever had a moment when you suddenly realized you were running through life on autopilot? Maybe it happened in traffic, staring at the brake lights ahead of you, or while scrolling through your phone late at night, lost in an endless loop of updates, emails, and other people's lives. There's this flicker of awareness, a quiet thought that says, wait, what am I even doing? And then, almost instantly, you drown it out with more noise, more plans, more distractions. That, right there, is the great forgetting Alan Watts talked about. The moment you stop realizing that you're playing a game, and start believing the game is all there is. Watts said life is a kind of theater, a cosmic play where every one of us wears a costume, plays a role, and eventually forgets that we're acting. You weren't born anxious, stressed, or obsessed with achievement. You were born as pure awareness, wide-eyed, and curious. But somewhere along the way, you began to take the costume seriously. You became the job title, the parent role, the achiever, the fixer, the one who's always trying to hold it all together. And you started to believe that if you ever took off the mask, the entire world would fall apart. But here's the truth, the world wouldn't fall apart, you would finally see it as it really is. We were taught early on that life is a test, that we have to prove ourselves, earn our worth, and meet invisible standards set by people who are just as lost as we are. You've probably heard that voice inside, the one that says, you should be further along by now, or you can't relax until everything is perfect. That voice is the echo of a culture that forgot it's playing a game. It's the sound of the ego clinging to control, terrified of being irrelevant. And the irony is, the more we chase meaning through control, the more meaningless everything feels. Think about it. When was the last time you truly felt alive? Not entertained, not distracted, not numbed by success, but genuinely alive? Maybe it was during a storm when the power went out and you sat there by candlelight, realizing how quiet the world can be. Maybe it was the day your child was born, or when you stood at a funeral and understood how fragile everything is. Those moments pull the curtain back. They remind you that there's something deeper behind the performance, something watching, feeling, experiencing it all. Watts used to say the problem isn't that life is a game. The problem is that we forgot we're playing. We treat every setback like a tragedy, every loss like the end of the world, every failure like a verdict. But what if it's just part of the plot? What if every twist, every disappointment, every heartbreak is simply a scene in the story you came here to live? Imagine sitting in a movie theater and getting angry at the screen because the characters are going through conflict. You'd laugh at yourself for taking it so seriously. Yet that's exactly what we do every day with our own lives. We wake up already braced for battle, checking messages, predicting problems, scanning for what could go wrong. We rush from one thing to another, convinced that our value depends on productivity. We say things like time is money as if existence itself is a transaction. And deep down, we're terrified to stop because if we stop, the silence might expose the truth that we've been acting for so long we no longer know who we are without the script. But here's the radical idea, what if nothing's wrong with you? What if you were never meant to fix yourself but to remember yourself? To wake up from the dream of endless striving and realize that you were never behind, never broken, never separate from the whole thing? Watts believed that underneath all the masks and roles, there's one consciousness playing billions of parts, pretending to forget itself just to rediscover the joy of remembering. You, me, everyone, we are that consciousness, temporarily disguised as individuals navigating chaos. And yes, that might sound abstract or mystical, but look around. Isn't it true that every person you meet is living in their own movie, their own little world of fears, hopes, and illusions? You are the protagonist of your story, but to someone else, you're just a side character walking by in the background. Life is a massive, interconnected theater, and the beauty of it lies in the fact that no one fully knows the script. We improvise, we stumble, we laugh, we cry, we learn, and that's the point. The tragedy isn't suffering. The tragedy is forgetting that suffering, too, has a role. Pain wakes us up. It interrupts the illusion. It forces awareness. When you're in deep emotional pain, you stop performing for a second, you stop pretending, and for that brief moment, you touch something real. That's not punishment. That's grace. Because the moment you see that even your struggles are part of the design, you stop fighting them. You start participating consciously. Maybe that's why so many people hit a wall in their 30s or 40s. You build the career, the family, the image, and then you realize none of it fills the hole inside. You start to sense there's something you've forgotten. You can feel it, but you can't name it. That's your soul knocking, asking to be remembered. That's the real beginning of awakening. So, what's the first step? It's simple, but not easy. Remember that this is all a play. Not a joke, not meaningless, but a sacred performance where every emotion, every triumph, every heartbreak has purpose. You don't need to quit your job or abandon your responsibilities to wake up. You just need to shift your relationship with them. You can still play the role, but play it consciously. Smile at the absurdity. Laugh at the drama. Feel everything deeply, but don't drown in it. Because the moment you remember that you're the actor, not just the role, the stage lights change. The pressure fades. The performance becomes play again. And maybe, for the first time, you start living instead of rehearsing. Because life was never meant to be survived, it was meant to be experienced. So the question isn't how do I win? The question is how do I wake up and remember that I was never lost? That's where it all begins, the end of forgetting, and the start of living with your eyes open. Have you noticed how worry has become a kind of national pastime? People wear it like a badge of honor. You hear it everywhere, I'm just stressed because I care. If I don't worry, who will? As if anxiety were proof of responsibility. As if tension meant control. But the truth is, it's not control, it's captivity. We've built an entire culture around the illusion that if we stay alert enough, plan enough, think enough, we can keep life from falling apart. Yet it keeps falling apart anyway, doesn't it? Think about your mornings. You wake up, check your phone, and before your feet hit the floor, your mind is already sprinting through to-do lists, bills, texts, potential crises. You call it being productive, but really, it's panic in disguise. You drink coffee not because you enjoy it, but because you're already bracing for battle. Your body hasn't even caught up to the day, and your mind is already halfway into next week. That's not living, that's surviving on autopilot. Alan Watts once said that worrying is like trying to pay a debt you don't owe. It gives you the illusion of doing something while doing nothing at all. You tell yourself, if I worry about this, I'm preparing. But worry doesn't prepare you, it paralyzes you. It's like sitting in a parked car, revving the engine until you run out of gas. You burn all your energy imagining problems that never happen. And even if one does, you've already suffered twice, once in your mind and once in reality. Somewhere along the way, we confused awareness with fear. We started thinking that if we stay tense, if we anticipate every worst-case scenario, we'll be safe. But that's not awareness, that's imprisonment. Real awareness is calm. It's the clarity of mind that sees what is, not what might be. But the modern world profits off your worry. Every headline screams danger, every ad whispers that something's missing, every platform rewards outrage. The more afraid you are, the more you click, buy, and scroll. Fear is the most successful marketing strategy in human history. We've been conditioned to believe that if we stop worrying, something terrible will happen, as if our anxiety is the glue holding the universe together. You've probably had that moment where things are going well, and suddenly you feel uneasy. You think, it's too quiet. Something must be wrong. That's not intuition, it's addiction. You've become so used to mental chaos that peace feels unnatural. Silence feels threatening because it leaves space for what you've been running from, yourself. Worry is seductive because it mimics purpose. It makes you feel like you're doing something. You can't solve the problem right now, but at least you're thinking about it, right? But this constant vigilance drains you. It robs you of presence, of connection, of joy. How many moments have you missed because your mind was somewhere else, rehearsing a future that never came? How many times have you tried to enjoy dinner, a walk, a conversation, only to find yourself hijacked by that background noise in your head whispering, "What if?" And here's the cruel twist: your mind doesn't know when to stop. Even when one crisis passes, it immediately looks for the next one. You pay off the debt, and suddenly you're worrying about the next bill. You fix the relationship, and now you're worrying about losing it. It's a never-ending treadmill. You run harder and harder, but the scenery never changes. That's because the problem isn't the circumstances, it's the habit of control. What's used to say that the desire for control is the root of suffering? Life, by nature, is uncertain. The weather changes, people change, health changes, everything moves. Trying to control it all is like trying to hold water in your fist. The tighter you grip, the faster it slips away. You can prepare, yes. You can act with wisdom. But worry is not preparation, it's resistance to reality. It's saying, I refuse to accept that life has its own rhythm. And that refusal is exhausting. Imagine standing on the shore, yelling at the waves to calm down. That's what worrying is. You don't stop the tide, you only tire yourself out. But the moment you stop yelling and start observing, something shifts. You begin to see patterns. You start to move with the water instead of against it. You realize the ocean was never the enemy, it was your need for control that kept you drowning. Now, this doesn't mean you should become careless or indifferent. It means you trade obsession for awareness. You act without attachment to results. You do what you can, and then you let go. Letting go isn't passive, it's powerful. It means trusting that life unfolds in ways you might not understand but are always meaningful. It means you stop micromanaging the universe and start collaborating with it. When you let go of the illusion of control, you don't lose power, you gain presence. You begin to notice small things again, the way light hits the morning coffee, the way laughter sounds when you're not multitasking, the way silence feels when you stop filling it with noise. You rediscover the beauty that was always there but invisible behind the fog of anxiety. And the irony? The moment you stop trying to control everything, you actually handle life better. Because you're grounded. You make clearer decisions. You respond instead of react. You stop wasting energy on imaginary problems and use it to solve real ones. That's the paradox Alan Watts was pointing to. True control begins when the need for control ends. So ask yourself, what would happen if you stopped worrying just for a moment? Not forever, just for 1 hour. Would the world fall apart, or would you realize it never depended on your anxiety in the first place? You've spent years mastering the art of tension. Maybe it's time to master the art of release. Because behind all the noise, all the panic, all the control, there's a deeper intelligence guiding life, something that's been running perfectly well long before you started worrying. You don't need to hold the universe together. You just need to stop pretending you're the one who's doing it. That's when real peace begins, not when everything's perfect, but when you finally stop fighting what is. And in that stillness, you remember that control was never the goal, presence was. We're taught to admire courage as the ability to charge into the storm, to fight, to conquer, to never back down. But what if the greatest act of courage isn't resistance at all? What if it's surrender? Alan Watts called this metaphysical courage, the strength not to fight against fear but to face it without flinching, without distraction, without pretending it isn't there. And that kind of courage, my friend, is rare. Because it demands something we've been trained to avoid, it asks us to feel. Most people think courage means being fearless. It doesn't. True courage means being fully conscious in the presence of fear. It's not about removing the feeling, it's about standing still while it moves through you. Think of a firefighter walking into a burning building. The fire doesn't stop being hot just because he's brave. The heat is still there. The smoke still stings. What changes is the relationship to fear. He doesn't run from it. He steps toward it. The same principle applies to emotional fire. Your fear, your grief, your shame, those are the flames. You can't make them disappear by denial or control. But you can learn to stand near them without being consumed. What's used to say that resistance is the root of all suffering? The moment we say, this shouldn't be happening, we create a split inside ourselves. Half of us feels the pain, the other half fights it. And that internal war is what exhausts us. Think about how much energy you spend avoiding emotions, keeping busy, staying distracted, numbing out. We call it coping, but often it's running in disguise. We think if we just outthink the feeling, it'll vanish. But feelings don't vanish when ignored, they harden. They calcify into anxiety, anger, resentment. And eventually, they start running the show from the shadows. Metaphysical courage asks you to do the opposite. Instead of trying to fix fear, you observe it. You let it unfold inside you without panic. Imagine sitting by a campfire. The closer you move, the more heat you feel. You don't fight the fire, you respect it. You find your distance. You let it warm you without burning you. Fear is the same way. It's a natural energy. It's not your enemy, it's your teacher. When you stop resisting it, it starts to transform. What once felt like paralysis becomes awareness. What once felt like chaos becomes aliveness. But let's be honest, it's not easy. Because the ego hates surrender. The ego wants control. It thrives on being the one who handles things. It says, I can fix this. I can think my way out. And when that fails, it panics. It tightens its grip. But here's the paradox. The more control you seek, the more powerless you feel. Because life doesn't bow to willpower, it flows where it flows. Metaphysical courage is about aligning with that flow instead of fighting it. It's saying, okay, I don't like this. I don't understand it. But I'm willing to stay present anyway. The samurai of ancient Japan understood this better than anyone. They studied Zen not to escape fear but to move through it with presence. They trained for years to cultivate what was called Fudoshin, the immovable mind. The goal wasn't to eliminate fear of death, it was to face death without resistance. To stand completely still inside chaos. They knew that beneath the raised sword lies hell, but crossing that line without hesitation leads to peace. The same applies to emotional battles. Beneath every moment of fear, shame, or grief lies hell, but walking through it without resistance reveals freedom. You don't have to be a warrior to practice this. You just need to stop running. When sadness hits, instead of scrolling it away or drinking it numb, sit with it. Feel its texture. Notice how it moves, how it changes. When anxiety rises, don't drown it in activity, breathe and let it pass through. Fear is like weather. You can't control the storm, but you can choose whether you stand in panic or in stillness. Every emotion, if allowed to complete its cycle, dissolves on its own. It's your resistance that keeps it alive. You might say, but I can't do that. I'll fall apart. Yes, you might. And that's okay. Falling apart is not failure. It's the beginning of rebuilding without the armor. What's once said, the only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance. That's what courage really is, the willingness to dance with chaos instead of hiding from it. When you stop resisting, you stop splitting yourself into the fighter and the fought. You become whole again. This isn't about weakness. It's about trust. Trust that life doesn't need your resistance to be meaningful. Trust that even fear has its place in the design. Because every time you surrender to what is, you expand. You stop being a small self trapped in control and become part of something larger, something intelligent, alive, and profoundly peaceful. So the next time fear shows up, don't try to fix it. Don't label it as bad or wrong. Just notice it. Feel it. Let it do what it came to do. You'll realize it's not there to destroy you, it's there to wake you up. The moment you stop resisting is the moment you begin living. That's metaphysical courage. It's not the roar of victory, it's the quiet strength of acceptance. It's the kind of courage that doesn't make headlines but changes everything inside you. And once you taste that stillness, you'll wonder how you ever mistook resistance for strength. Because when you stop fighting what you feel, life stops being an enemy. It becomes what it always was, a sacred game that you were meant to play, not control. And that, right there, is the beginning of freedom. Have you ever noticed how worry never really ends? You solve one problem, and before you can even breathe, another one shows up. You finally get that job, and now you're afraid of losing it. You pay off the debt, and suddenly you're anxious about the next bill. You find peace in a relationship, and then you start fearing the day it might end. It's like peeling an onion. Every time you remove one layer, another one appears. That's not life being cruel. That's the mind being addicted to anxiety. Alan Watts called this the infinite onion of worry. The truth is, most people wouldn't know what to do with themselves if the worrying stopped. We've built entire identities around being stressed, responsible, and on top of things. Anxiety has become the background noise of modern existence, the hum of civilization itself. It gives us something to do when life gets too quiet, too still, too real. We say we want peace, but when silence arrives, we panic. Because silence leaves us face to face with a question we've spent years avoiding: who am I without my problems? Somewhere along the way, we turned worrying into a virtue. We started equating tension with responsibility, as if being relaxed meant being careless. How many times have you heard someone say, "I can't help it, I'm just a worrier," like it's part of their personality? That's not personality, that's conditioning. We inherited it from parents who thought that love meant constant concern, from a culture that confuses stress with success, and from a society that teaches us to measure worth in productivity. If you're not anxious, they assume you're not trying hard enough. But what if anxiety isn't a sign of caring, it's a symptom of disconnection? Think about this: anxiety thrives in imagination, not in reality. You can't worry about something that's happening right now, you worry about what might happen. Anxiety feeds on tomorrow. It survives by pulling you out of the present moment, convincing you that safety lives in the future if only you think hard enough. But no matter how much you think, the future never arrives as planned. It never has. You can't outthink uncertainty. You can only live through it. We all know that rush of panic that sneaks up at night. You're lying in bed, your body's tired, but your mind refuses to quit. It keeps flipping through worst-case scenarios like TV channels you can't turn off. You tell yourself you're just being realistic, but deep down, you know it's an addiction. Because part of you feels strangely alive when you worry. The adrenaline, the alertness, the illusion of control, it gives you a sense of purpose. The anxious mind says, as long as I'm worrying, I'm protecting myself. But that's a lie. You're not protecting yourself. You're punishing yourself. You're trying to fight uncertainty with thought, and thought is powerless against life's chaos. Watts said something brutally simple: the habit of worry is a way of keeping the mind busy so you don't have to face the void. That void he's talking about is silence. Stillness. Presence. The part of you that exists beyond the roles and the rush. It's the same space monks meditate to reach, but for most people, it's terrifying. Because when you stop worrying, all the noise disappears, and what's left is the raw, unfiltered truth of who you are. And for many, that's scarier than any external threat. Here's the irony: we crave peace but reject the very conditions that create it. We fill every moment with distraction because we're terrified of stillness. We fear that if we stop moving, stop fixing, stop worrying, we'll fall apart. But the truth is, you're already falling apart, just slowly, through exhaustion. The worry loop drains your life force drop by drop, day after day. And yet, the moment you stop fighting it, the moment you step back and actually see the pattern, something shifts. Awareness breaks the cycle. Let's get real for a second. You can't think your way out of anxiety because thinking is the anxiety. You can't peel away the layers of the onion by analyzing each one, you have to drop the onion entirely. You have to stop believing that every thought deserves your attention. The anxious mind is like a radio that never turns off. The volume changes, the stations switch, but the noise keeps playing. The practice isn't about fixing the radio, it's about learning to listen without attachment. To hear the noise without being it. This doesn't mean you'll never feel anxious again. You will. But the difference is, you'll stop treating it like an emergency. You'll start seeing it as a wave that rises and falls. You'll recognize that every worry follows the same pattern. It appears, it builds, and then it fades, unless you feed it with more thought. The more you resist it, the more power it gains. But when you observe it without judgment, it burns itself out. Anxiety feeds on your participation. It needs you to believe the story it's telling. The moment you stop reacting, the story collapses. That's what's meant when he said freedom begins the moment you stop resisting what is. You can't control life, but you can stop adding unnecessary suffering to it. You can stop living like peace is something to be earned. Peace isn't earned, it's allowed. It's the default state that returns when the noise quiets down. So here's the challenge. The next time you catch yourself spiraling in worry, don't fight it and don't feed it. Just say, there it is again, the onion. Smile at it. See it for what it is, a habit, not reality. Feel it in your body. Let it move. Let it breathe. You don't have to peel it. You just have to stop gripping it. And with time, the grip loosens. The thoughts still come, but they lose their authority. They pass like clouds instead of storms. That's the moment you start reclaiming your life from anxiety. Not by becoming fearless, but by no longer mistaking fear for truth. Because beneath all those layers of worry, beneath all the noise and tension, there's something unshakable. It's you. The real you, calm, aware, and alive. And that part of you has never been anxious. It's just been waiting for you to remember it. There's a moment in life when you realize that control isn't strength, it's fear in disguise. We spend years trying to shape the world, to force people, timing, and circumstances into alignment, believing that if we can just get it right, we'll finally feel safe. But life keeps reminding us that it's not here to be controlled. It's here to be experienced. Alan Watts said, "Stop trying to make sense of it all." The mystery is not something to solve, it's something to participate in. And that's exactly what most of us have forgotten, how to participate instead of manipulate. We live like storm chasers, trying to predict every lightning strike, every gust of wind, as if knowing would make us immune to pain. But the truth is, life isn't asking you to outsmart it. It's asking you to marvel at it. To trade resistance for reverence. To stop being the soldier and start being the witness. The one who doesn't fight the storm but stands in it with eyes wide open. Have you ever watched a thunderstorm from your window, completely still, letting it roar without trying to stop it? That's what it means to live consciously. Not controlling the chaos, but appreciating the beauty inside it. We've been trained to approach emotions like problems. Feel fear, fix it. Feel sadness, distract yourself. Feel anger, apologize for it. We dissect feelings like mechanics dissect engines, trying to remove whatever part is making noise. But emotions aren't malfunctions, they're messages. They're weather patterns in the atmosphere of your soul. When you stop resisting them, they start revealing their purpose. Anger becomes clarity. Sadness becomes depth. Fear becomes awareness. You don't need to suppress or escape them. You need to listen. What's used to compare human emotions to the ocean? Some days it's calm and glassy, others it's wild and untamed. The waves crash, they rise, they dissolve, and still, the ocean remains. You are that ocean. Your emotions are just waves. But you spend your days trying to flatten them, to keep the surface perfectly still. And when the waves inevitably come, you panic, thinking something's wrong. But nothing's wrong. That's just life moving through you. Reverence begins when you stop judging the waves and start honoring the tide. This shift, from resistance to reverence, changes everything. You begin to see that what you called problems were never enemies, they were invitations. Every challenge, every heartbreak, every fear was a call to expand your awareness, to grow roots in places you used to run from. You start seeing pain not as punishment but as a teacher. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this showing me?" That simple change in language turns suffering into awakening. But here's where it gets real, reverence doesn't come from comfort. It's born in the fire. It's when life strips away everything you thought you needed, control, certainty, identity, and leaves you standing there with nothing but the raw presence of the moment. You either collapse into resistance or fall into surrender. And if you choose surrender, you don't break, you open. You begin to see sacredness in everything. Even in the chaos, even in the loss, even in the silence after the storm. You start to notice the small miracles again. The way the sun sneaks through the blinds in the morning. The way your breath steadies when you stop rushing. The way laughter sounds when you're not forcing it. Reverence turns the ordinary into holy ground. It reminds you that peace was never about perfect conditions, it was about perfect awareness. The storm doesn't need to end for you to find calm. You just need to stop standing in opposition to life. And yes, the mind will fight this. It will say, if I don't control, everything will fall apart. But that's the lie that's been running your whole life. Control didn't protect you, it drained you. It narrowed your world down to safety plans and expectations. Reverence expands it again. It brings you back into flow, back into curiosity, back into awe. Because once you remember that life doesn't owe you understanding, you begin to appreciate it instead. Think about how you respond to nature. You don't yell at a mountain for being too tall. You don't scold the ocean for being too deep. You stand there in awe, accepting their vastness. Why can't you do that with your own life? Why can't you look at your journey, with all its chaos and imperfections, and say, this too is sacred? That's not denial. That's maturity. That's reverence. And here's the secret, when you stop fighting life, life stops fighting you. You start to move with it instead of against it. You make decisions from clarity, not fear. You stop trying to force timing, and timing starts working with you. You realize that what you once called coincidence is actually choreography, the dance of something greater that's been guiding you all along. So let me ask you, what would happen if you started treating your emotions, your struggles, your uncertainty with reverence instead of resistance? If, instead of saying, I hate this, you said, I'm curious about this. You'd stop trying to fix the moment and start experiencing it. You'd begin to see that even the painful parts are alive with wisdom. Because life isn't asking you to control it. It's inviting you to trust it. It's saying, let me move through you. And when you finally say yes, when you surrender not as defeat but as devotion, you experience something astonishing. Peace stops being a distant goal and becomes your natural state. The storm doesn't go away, but suddenly, you're not afraid of the rain. You walk into it, feel it on your skin, and realize that the whole time you were resisting life, it was waiting to embrace you. That is the beauty of reverence. It's the end of war with what is. It's the moment you stop trying to win at life and start falling in love with it again. At some point, you stop asking life to be easy and start asking it to be real. That's the shift. That's the moment you wake up from the trance. Alan Watts used to say that the purpose of life isn't to escape the play, it's to remember that you're acting in it. You don't leave the stage, you just stop believing that the role you're playing is all that you are. And when that realization hits you, it feels like rebellion. A quiet, metaphysical rebellion against everything you were conditioned to believe about fear, control, and success. You see, most people are sleepwalking through existence. They confuse movement with meaning, ambition with purpose, survival with living. They wake up anxious, rush through their day, collapse into distraction at night, and call it normal. But deep down, something inside them knows. It whispers, this isn't it. That whisper is the beginning of awakening, the moment the actor starts to remember the script. The moment you stop running from yourself and start watching the show. Living awake doesn't mean you float above life, detached and enlightened. It means you walk through the same storms everyone else does, but you do it consciously. You feel the rain, but you don't curse it. You face loss, but you don't see it as punishment. You still cry, still love, still break, but you know it's all part of the divine choreography. Every joy, every heartbreak, every setback, these aren't random events. They're lines in the script you helped write before you forgot who you were. When you live awake, you stop asking, why is this happening to me, and start realizing, this is happening for me. You begin to see meaning even in the chaos. You start noticing how every person who enters your life, even the difficult ones, is playing a role in your growth. The one who betrayed you taught you boundaries. The one who rejected you showed you self-worth. The one who abandoned you forced you to find your own strength. And suddenly, you are no longer a victim of life's plot, you are an active participant. But awakening isn't comfortable. It's not all peace and candles and quiet mornings. It's raw. It's the death of illusion. When you wake up, you see everything clearly, including your own patterns, your own fears, your own ego playing defense. And the ego doesn't go quietly. It resists. It wants control. It wants certainty. It says, stay asleep. It's safer there. But once you've tasted awareness, you can't go back. You start craving authenticity more than comfort, truth more than approval. That's what makes it a rebellion, because you're no longer serving the illusion. You're serving the truth. Living awake is not about fixing your life, it's about participating in it with presence. It's walking into every moment, even the painful ones, and saying, I'm here. I accept this scene. It's laughing in the middle of confusion, breathing in the middle of chaos, finding beauty where no one else sees it. And that takes real courage, the kind that doesn't roar, but whispers, I choose to stay. Because it's easy to fight. It's easy to run. What's hard is to feel everything and still remain open. The world today doesn't reward that kind of strength. It tells you to hustle, to optimize, to get ahead. But ahead of what? What are we racing toward? A finish line that doesn't exist? We live like we're trying to earn a gold medal in surviving. But there is no medal. There's only awareness. There's only the ability to sit in the middle of your life and say, this, right here, is enough. Because when you stop trying to win, you start to live. When you stop seeing life as a test, you start to see it as art. This is what's meant when he said life is a cosmic game of hide and seek. The universe hides from itself so it can rediscover itself through you. It forgets just long enough to make the remembering worthwhile. And now, you're remembering. That's the awakening, the moment you realize you were never separate, never broken, never behind. You were just playing the role of someone who was. Living awake doesn't mean you stop feeling fear or sadness. It means you stop resisting them. You let them move through you without labeling them as wrong. You stop needing life to be different and begin to see it as perfect in its imperfection. You stop fighting reality, and reality starts revealing its beauty. You stop chasing meaning and realize meaning was never lost. It's in every breath, every laugh, every tear. This is metaphysical courage in its purest form, the courage to stay awake in a world that profits from your sleep. The courage to walk through pain with open eyes, to love without guarantees, to trust without proof. To know that no matter what happens, you are not the character, you are the consciousness behind it. You are not the storm, you are the sky it moves through. So what does it look like to live awake in everyday life? It looks like forgiving without needing closure. It looks like listening more than reacting. It looks like slowing down enough to actually taste your food, hear the birds, feel the warmth of the sun on your skin. It looks like choosing presence over performance, authenticity over approval. And when you live this way, you begin to notice something profound. Peace isn't something you achieve, it's what's left when you stop pretending. And that's the final truth, you don't have to win at life. You don't need a trophy, a title, or a guarantee. You just need to remember you were never the pawn, you were the player all along. The script was never against you, it was written for you, to wake you up, to stretch you, to make you feel everything you came here to feel. And now that you remember that, you can finally start playing consciously. So live fully. Laugh deeply. Let life break you open if it must, and trust that every fracture lets more light in. Because you're not here to escape the game, you're here to play it beautifully, bravely, and awake. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this journey. I know your time is valuable. If this message spoke to you, if it gave you even one moment of clarity or peace, I'd be grateful if you'd let me know. A simple like, a comment with your thoughts, or subscribing to the channel helps this community grow, and it helps more people who might need these words to find them. Share your reflections below. I do read them. I'll see you in the next chapter. Until then, take care of your peace.